This is a tutorial of crow pose or Bakasana. I want to show you a couple variations, ways to get up into the pose. I want to first focus on hand placement and where the work in your hands needs to be. This is super important, even if it seems boring and unnecessary. It'll help you not only in this pose, but in future hand balancing, handstand, but even in plank and chaturanga, which most of you do, right? Okay, so, or even hands and knees. Okay, so I'm going to move the film just a bit. So your hand, the placement should be, first of all, generally, the peace sign finger point, the space between the pinky, excuse me, the ring and the middle finger point straight forward. Um, there can be a turnout slightly of the fingers. That's fine if that's needed for shoulder tightness. Generally, almost always, the outer deltoid lines up with the middle wrist. So hands here for someone my size is too wide. Hands here for someone my size is too narrow, right? So my hands are, this is just about right for me. All right. So the next thing is that when using the hand, what you'll see almost always is people just roll onto this little outer cartridge. It's cartilage. It's so normal. I remember having to really focus when I first started learning about hand placement. So instead, what we want is to press very strongly into the finger mound and to claw into the earth. Yeah, you can see. Good. I'm glad you can see this on film. So see how I have this knuckle rooted to the earth because it's the one that's going to want to get light. And my fingertips are actually white. I mean, I'm really exaggerating here, but the reason I'm doing that is because I want you to see how much, even the little knuckles of the fingers are curling up, how much it's necessary to work the hands. This helps the forearms work. It also gives you some breaks with your hands when you start to go forward. All right, so we want the forearms to work because otherwise it's very common that we're just dumping into the wrist, and that has tremendous effect on shoulder alignment. We want to stack the bones to be safe, you know. All right, so here are some beginning things for crow pose. Number one, and I'm not going to do a big opening to this, but it is extremely helpful to be able to do this pose, which is a variation of Malasana. It is extremely helpful to be able to get really low in Malasana. That can that's another video, but that is different for every person. You will see people saying this is crow, and I'm not arguing if this is crow or not. That's fine. This is how I learned it in the beginning. If you're using light on yoga, it's not what BKS Iyengar says is crow, and I kind of think it's fun to teach a more classical variation of it. And I find that there's extreme power um, available when we can get ourselves in little tight packages. So I'm going to show you crow pose, and then I'm going to show some variations. All right? Okay. So my inner feet are together. So this is Malasana prep. My knees go apart. I'm going to snuggle my ribs deep in between my inner thighs. I place my hands just like chaturanga or plank pose. And then the thing that the instinct is butt up. So, like a lot of things in yoga, I do the opposite of what's instinct and easier. So, my elbows do hug in a bit. I'm going to start to lean forward over my toes. You'll see my butt lift a bit. There is some wrist flexibility here, of course. I look forward, not down, and eventually my toes get light. Now, I squeeze my elbows, my knees into my elbows. My shoulder blades protract, and then I begin to push down. And I try to squeeze my heels as tight to my glutes as I can, or my buttocks. Note that my shoulders are quite forward of my fingertips. All right. So here are a couple things that you can do if it's like, oh my God, that's scary. So for one thing, you are more than welcome to put a bolster or pillows in front of you. You could even have totally somebody spot you, like stand in front of you and just be ready to push your shoulders back if you feel like you might dump forward. I think a lot of what stops people from getting this pose is fear. makes sense, self-preservation. And I think it's also what's so powerful about arm balances is the opportunity to see like, oh, cool. I did something despite my kind of conditioned thinking and it worked. Okay, so this is one of my favorites. It's like Tweety Bird. You can get a block, and this is a great entrance for people who are ready to take the leap, but it's scary. So you come onto the block, or I'm sorry, not even necessarily scary. It might be hard to get deep into the shape. So this gives you, it's so cool, quite a little bit of assistance. So I'm still going to try to get my self right down in between my knees, right? So see where my knee is. I mean, it's way up to the outer armpit. All right. Now I'm prepared. This is great. It's less work here. I'm going to place my hands strongly, lean forward, and look, I'm like, ta-da! Okay, I can stay here, but I do want to activate this squeezing in and bowing of the back. Okay, so remember in yoga asanas, we want the energy to move throughout the system. So I don't want to just hang into the pose. All right. Okay. And by the way, I do want to make sure that before you do these practices, you do wrist stretches. And I'll do a video on wrist stretches, preps for the wrist, strengthening, things like that. Because I want to say, these are challenging on the wrists. They are. I've been doing yoga for a long time. And my wrists get tired and I sometimes it's like I don't like that. Also, it is normal for this to be sometimes painful because your bones are on bones. Okay, so that's a great first step. I want to show you something I see commonly, which is people, you know how we are, it's like whoa. It's like we just want to go for it. I don't want to just take the time to wait till I really feel the invitation to move forward. And like most things in yoga, this is such a lovely metaphor for life. So let's look at this. So the way that I find if people will be patient, and I know it's hard, is if you'll wait and really listen for cues instead of forcing it to happen. Okay, so look, I come into the basic shape. I squeeze my knees in. See the rounding in the back of the abdominals? The power activates my arms, or my hands are firm and activated. Now I'm going to lift my tippy toes up and I'm going to resist the urge to do this because I promise you, your head will be like, butt up. Now, come forward, look forward. Well, what's happening next? You got to keep coming forward. Slide forward, and it feels so weird and wrong. And then eventually the toes will get light. One heel up. Stay. Put it down. One heel up. Maybe lean forward more and the other one will come up. Squeeze the inner feet together. But maybe it won't come up. That's okay. Take time to practice the moving forward slowly. Try it out, all right? So hope this is helpful. I'm going to go over one more time just this crow pose, just in case you want to see it, but you're welcome to stop it if this is long enough for you. Okay, so here I am, inner feet together, knees wide apart, gaze forward, not down, because I'm going to go where I'm looking and I don't want to go down. All right, squeeze knees in, tail curls in. Keep squeezing knees, look forward, roll forward. When my feet get light, they come up. I draw my heels strongly in towards my buttocks. I squeeze my knees in, and then I begin pushing down through my hands to come up. Namaste.